Okay, now we're live. Welcome everybody to our second webinar for parents, Q&A with Dr. Ross Greene. And we want to make sure that you know that you can type questions in as they occur to you on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will get to as many of them as we possibly can. And we look forward to having the discussion. To kick things off, let's Dr. Greene, you want to say anything before we jump into some of the questions we've received?
Hi, everybody, and happy Thanksgiving in advance to our American viewers.
That's right. I can't believe it's already Thanksgiving.
It is very cold tonight in Portland, Maine.
Yeah, winter is right around the corner for sure. Okay, so one of the topics we were going to talk about tonight, which is something that sort of trends in our Facebook parent group called the B Team, is how do you as a parent stay emotionally righted and grounded when the maladaptive behavior that your kid is exhibiting is, really nasty, lots of swears and real personal and directed towards you yourself. So how do you kind of stay righted through that behavior to keep the lens in mind of kids doing well if they can?
Well, it's hard to think kids do well if they can at those moments, and the answer is it's not easy. But the two things about the CPS model that make it easier, not easy, easier, is number one, the model is oriented toward being proactive. So the whole goal of the model is to help people find themselves in the heat of the moment as seldom as possible. And of course, the way we do that is with the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems. It helps you stay righted to know that your kid is lacking skills rather than thinking he's pushing your buttons. It helps you stay righted to know what unmet expectations, or what we call unsolved problems, are reliably and predictably setting in motion challenging episodes, because that helps you intervene proactively. It helps you organize the effort by deciding, here are the things we are working on, that's plan B, and here are the things we are setting aside for now, we are prioritizing away for now, that's plan C. So the whole goal is to help people not find themselves in the heat of the moment. If you should happen to find yourself in the heat of the moment, the best thing to bear in mind, I'm not sure if kids do all if they can is the best thing to bear in mind at those moments, but rather that all behavior is the signal, the fever, the byproduct, the manner by which the kid is expressing, and in ways that we wish he wouldn't, but this is what he's doing right now, that an expectation has been placed upon him or her that he or she is having difficulty meeting. So it's a little bit easier not to take the behavior personally and to stay righted when you know that all the behavior is the signal, the fever, the way the kid is communicating. And then to say to yourself, what did I miss? Because if you've already used the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems to identify your child's lagging skills and identify unsolved problems, and if you've already identified, prioritized which unsolved problems we're going to be working on now and which ones we're not, then anything that pops up should be a fairly random event. And if you should happen to find yourself in the heat of the moment after doing the ALSUP, nothing takes the place of doing the ALSUP. It's huge. But the whole purpose of the ALSUP is to get people out of the heat of the moment and to make challenging episodes as predictable as possible. In which case, once they're predictable, there shouldn't be many surprises left. In which case, if a parent should happen to get surprised by an unsolved problem and a kid expressing that an expectation has been placed upon him or her that he or she is having difficulty meeting, the real goal is to say to ourselves, what did we miss? What did we miss? Because the ALSUP should have helped us catch this. If the ALSUP didn't help us catch it, we must have missed it. We better add whatever just caused this outburst to our list of unsolved problems and then decide, is this a high priority or is this one we're not working on right now? But the whole goal of the model is to get people out of the heat of the moment.
And one of our participants has submitted a related question. How do you implement Plan B when a child is hitting and kicking regularly?
The child is hitting and kicking regularly in the heat of the moment over an expectation that the child is having difficulty meeting. Hitting and kicking is the behavior, but once again, as unpleasant as that is, and I'm not dismissing the fact that hitting and kicking and swearing and screaming and other stuff isn't unpleasant. It's very unpleasant. But we're also at that point what I call downstream. And we got to paddle upstream to find the problems that are causing those behaviors. Otherwise, we will find ourselves back in the heat of the moment dealing with kicking and hitting every single day over every problem that we could be busy solving proactively. So how do you do Plan B when a kid is kicking and hitting? Well, that's bad timing on doing Plan B. The whole goal is to do Plan B to solve the problems so he's not hitting and kicking in response to them anymore. Kids don't exhibit challenging behavior in response to solved problems. They only exhibit challenging behavior in response to problems that are still unsolved.
Awesome, definitely. And we have another question from a participant. How do you implement this with a child with both receptive and expressive communication issues who dysregulates at random?
Well, the hard thing about kids with communication delays is that it seems like they are dysregulating at random because they are lacking the language processing and communication skills to tell us what's the matter when something's the matter. Now, having said that, there are many kids who have intact language processing and communication skills who aren't telling us either. So we still have to figure it out. And in kids who can't tell you, we have to just be very good observers. Growling is communicating. Grunting is communicating. Headbanging is communicating. Biting is communicating. Spitting is communicating. We still have to do a very fine-grained analysis of when is that happening, because so long as we believe that the child is dysregulating at random, we'll never identify the unsolved problems that are actually causing this kid to dysregulate predictably. We've got to move it from the seemingly random to what is really more predictable than it at first seems. Now to the other part of the question. There are all kinds of technologies out there for kids who have expressive and receptive language delays. Some of them are expensive. I prefer a technology called Google Images, which is free, as long as you have an internet connection, to try to depict in pictures unsolved problems. And if you've used Google Images, you know all you got to do is enter a word, and you're going to get 15 different pictures that you can use to depict a particular unsolved problem and to depict solutions, because the whole goal with kids with expressive and or receptive delays is to find a different way for them to communicate with us besides words. We still want to see if there's a way to develop those words, and we are still looking for ways to develop for this child a vocabulary of unsolved problems and solutions. But early on, we're probably going to have to do that in pictures and try to make this something that the kid can just point to so that we know what's troubling the child, and also have a menu of solutions in pictures to the unsolved problems the kid is dealing with most often. That's how we tend to do it with kids. Now, here's the interesting thing. That's how speech and language therapists do it with kids with expressive and or receptive language delays. All we're doing is focusing our efforts on some pretty narrow areas, but they're pretty big: unsolved problems, concerns, solutions. That's usually how we do it with kids with expressive and or receptive language delays.
I love what you said about being keen observers and sometimes really needing to hone in your observation skills when you're not able to get more than a grunt or a growl and trying to figure out the unsolved problems. And I did just post.
But before we go on, that's how we do it with infants.
Right.
Infants don't have words. but infants do communicate that they are in distress, that they are uncomfortable, that they want something, that they don't want something being done to them. Infants communicate, but they do not use words. It is no different with a child at the age of 3, 10, 17 who's having difficulty communicating in one way or another in words.
Absolutely. And we have a sample of identifying unsolved problems in pictures on our website that I just included the link for in our
Excellent.
conversation. Another question from a participant: do you have recommendations or best practices for young children ages 5 to 6 years old?
As it relates to doing Plan B, my recommendations and best practices are the exact same as they would be with a 17 or 18-year-old. 3 steps. Plan B, empathy step. Let's get the kids' concerns on the table. I'm often surprised, this person who's asking this question is not saying this, but I'm often surprised, well, I shouldn't be surprised because I get asked this question frequently. Can you do Plan B with a 5 or 6-year-old? We do Plan B with 2 and 3-year-olds. 5 and 6, as long as this kid has intact language processing skills, you should be good to go. If the kid doesn't have intact language processing skills, we're going to have to find another way to communicate, but you're still good to go. My practices with a 5 and 6-year-old are the same as they would be with a 17 or 18-year-old. Identify lagging skills and unsolved problems using the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems. Use the problem-solving plan to prioritize. What are we working on? What are we not working on right now? What are we setting aside? Get good at those 3 steps of Plan B. That's what I do with 5 and 6-year-olds. That's what I do in 2 and 3-year-olds. That's what I do with 17 and 18-year-olds.
My now 5-year-old gave me some great practice of beginning around the age of 2 or even a little bit before, because there were such clear unsolved problems that were leading to her throwing herself on the floor, and I could see them, and so it was a teeny bit, it sounded a little bit different, but it followed the 3 steps and was a godsend, I have to say. Let's see. How can a parent explain the nature of the way a child explodes to the child? It seems like this child experiences shame and guilt after the explosion, and it's impacting her self-esteem, and she's confused about why she reacts the way she does.
Well, I just did this in my office about, let me think, about, let's see, an hour ago. I was explaining to the child, and nobody knows who this kid is, so I'll be a little explicit. This kid has probably collected 7 or 8 diagnoses in his or her life. And this kid has been on about 20 medications in her life, his or her life. And what I said was, you get frustrated a little bit more easily. And when you get frustrated, you react a little bit more strongly. But I think we can work on those things, because the things you're getting frustrated about are just problems that we can solve together. And the more problems we solve and the more practice you get at solving those problems, the less upset you're going to get about problems in the future. So not only are we going to solve problems collaboratively to get these problems solved, we're also going to solve problems collaboratively so that over time, you get better at solving the problems that affect your life. And then you won't be getting so frustrated so easily, and you won't be reacting so strongly when you do get frustrated. That's how I explain it to most kids. I've seen so many kids over the last 25 years who had collected so many psychiatric diagnoses and had been on so many medications, when in fact, the main reason they had collected those diagnoses and the main reason they were on those medications was because they were more easily frustrated than the average Joe and reacted more strongly to those frustrations than the average Joe. And as I was driving home tonight, I was thinking to myself, what a mess we've gotten ourselves into. Not that some kids don't benefit from being diagnosed, not that some kids don't benefit from medication, but there sure are a lot of kids out there who don't have a lot to show for all those diagnoses and all those medications, because people have been primarily focused on the diagnoses and the behavior and the medications, and they haven't been focused on what's going on upstream, the problems that are causing the frustration and that are causing the overreactions. I find that when we focus on those problems, a lot of the kids who end up in my office with any variety of diagnoses start not meeting criteria for those diagnoses anymore, because the problems that were causing the behavior that caused them to get those diagnoses have been solved.
Excellent. And I love what you said about, you know, how you're messaging to the kid that they're not in it alone, and that they have a partner in figuring this all out and solving problems, and a partner who's going to be very understanding. So that alone in and of itself can really help as well. We have a participant asking if you've seen a connection between certain foods and behaviors, like artificial colors and flavors. Hi, I don't know if I can pronounce this right.
Salicylates.
Salicylates. Thank you. Dairy, gluten, etc.
Have I seen a connection? In individual kids, yes. The research is a little less compelling on an aggregate basis. Some researchers would tell you that there's no connection, but I have seen a connection firsthand in individual kids. So if a parent comes in and says, if he eats M&Ms, he's off the wall in 15 minutes, I don't say to them, it can't be the M&Ms. I say to them, all right, well, I guess it could be the M&Ms. I have worked with kids for whom gluten was an issue contributing to their behavioral problems. I have worked with kids for whom artificial colors and sugar and cough syrup and cold medicine contributed to behavioral issues. And so there's no downside in believing people. To tell you the truth, if parents are saying to me, when he takes XYZ cough medicine, he's completely off the wall, we probably have a solution to that problem. It's an unsolved problem. That's all it is. No reason not to believe people. We need a solution to that, right? If parents say to me, you know, he eats M&Ms 15 minutes later, Halloween's my least favorite time of year because my child's off the wall for the next 3 weeks, we need a solution to that unsolved problem. No reason to dismiss the parent's own observation of their own kid. Why would we do that? So I've definitely seen diet. Sleep is a very big one, very underrated. So, you know, these are all things that we should be inquiring about as just part of a good assessment when we're looking at lagging skills, and especially when we're looking at unsolved problems. Difficulty going to school the next day if he goes to bed at 1 a.m. Great unsolved problem, right? If we don't get that problem solved, he's going to stay tired and going to continue having difficulty waking up in the morning to go to school. Just an unsolved problem. I believe parents when they tell me they see a connection.
Absolutely. One of our participants is asking, how can a parent apply CPS to a diagnosis? So if a kid has a particular diagnosis, how does CPS fit in?
Well, you still have to figure out what the kid's lagging skills are. You still have to figure out what the kid's unsolved problems are. Lagging skills answer the question, why? Why is my kid challenging? Way better than a diagnosis does. The lagging skills help us get the right lenses on. The unsolved problems answer the question, when? When is my child running into difficulty? And the answer, of course, generically is when there are expectations being placed upon him that he's having difficulty handling. So far, I haven't mentioned a diagnosis. Then you have to start solving those problems, the ones you've prioritized, using Plan B. I would do that if a kid was diagnosed with ADHD. I would do that if a kid was diagnosed with pediatric bipolar disorder. I would do that if a kid was diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder. I would do that if a kid was diagnosed with an autism spectrum disorder. I'm having difficulty thinking of a childhood psychiatric disorder I would not do that with. If you're asking, if the question is, does the diagnosis change anything? The answer is probably not, because I've probably worked with I don't know, 2,000 kids diagnosed with ADHD over the last 25 years. They all had different lagging skills and they all had different unsolved problems. And once we figured out what their lagging skills and unsolved problems were, we found that the diagnosis was actually not that informative. So I would have great difficulty applying the method to a diagnosis. I would have no difficulty whatsoever applying the method to unsolved problems, but those are going to be different even if a kid has the same diagnosis as another kid.
And I find too that whether it's for parents or educators or clinicians, a diagnosis in and of itself doesn't tell you much as far as what can you do, you know, and so translating your observations into lagging skills and unsolved problems, now you're prepared to actually work on something to get things going better.
I work, tonight's a great example. I work with a lot of parents who've got a big pile of diagnoses to show for their efforts over the last 5 or 10 years. But they're still saying, nobody's explained our kid very well yet. He's still a puzzle. He's still a mystery. What I've taken to saying frequently is a kid is going to remain a puzzle. A kid is going to remain a mystery until we figure out what his or her lagging skills and unsolved problems are, and then the kid's not a puzzle or a mystery anymore.
One sort of related question that came in ahead of the webinar had to do with when would you advise parents to seek out professional help with somebody who knows the CPS model? And also for the providers that we list on cpsconnection.com, which I'll post the link in a moment, what is their level of skill with the model?
Well, first of all, lots of people participate in the certification trainings that I do, but not everybody gets certified. So the people who do get certified have achieved a level of proficiency in the CPS model. They've passed the Greene litmus test. They're good. So they've had to go through a fairly intensive 6 to 8 month training in which I am listening to their work and giving them continuous feedback. And by that method, they get really good at the model. So they don't get listed unless they're really good. When would I seek professional help? Well, seeking professional help doesn't mean you're in for 10 to 12 sessions. Seeking professional help may just mean you need some fine tuning. Seeking professional help may mean you want to see if you're doing it okay. And so sometimes professional help, there's many people who I work with who I only see once. They just wanted to make sure they were doing it right. They want to make sure they were on the right track and that they had it down. So they only meet me once. And I would say the same for all of these certified providers listed on the CPS Connection website. And I'm seeing that you have listed posted the link there. I think you seek help when you feel you need it. No blood test for when you feel you need it. No litmus test. If you feel like things are beyond, if a parent feels like things are beyond their capacity to handle it well, I think you seek help.
Thank you. A participant is asking, how would you approach schoolmates or friends impacting forward progress?
How would I approach schoolmates and friends who are impacting forward progress? I'm not completely sure I understand that one. A bit more detail about what she means, unless you are intuiting that one better than me.
I would hesitate to guess. Maybe Nicole, could you submit a little bit more to answer your question the way that you we're not missing anything.
I think we get it in the ballpark, but I don't think we know what row we're sitting in yet.
Always have a fun way of putting things. A follow-up question around the food sensitivities. Do you know of a reliable way to test sensitivities?
I usually rely on people who specialize in testing for allergies. They are able to test for many things these days, food allergies in particular. So I think you call the people who do that kind of testing and you see if food allergies is one of the things, food sensitivities is one of the things they test for. In my experience, most do. That's probably where I'd start.
We have a question about working with adoptees. Have you ever worked with adoptees?
Have you
If
ever
so,
worked
would
with
you
adoptees?
describe
If
any
so,
specific
would you
patterns
describe
of
any
ways you
specific
have
patterns of ways you have applied?
I have not found ways that CPS applied in unique ways to kids who are adopted. Kids who are adopted have lagging skills and unsolved problems, but they are highly individualized, and I have not seen any lagging skills and unsolved problems that are unique to kids who are adopted. Maybe one, maybe a few that are related to the adoption, but 99% of the unsolved problems I find in adopted kids are not a whole lot different than the unsolved problems I find in kids who have not been adopted. That doesn't mean that the adoption process, or even later on, when kids are thinking about biological parents and maybe wanting to have contact with them, or sometimes saying mean things in the heat of the moment about their adoptive parents, doesn't mean that those things aren't going on, but those usually translate into unsolved problems. And kids who are not adopted say very mean things to their non-adoptive parents. They're just not nailing their parents for being the adopted parents, but they're finding something else to say that's mean. Remember, that's just the signal. That doesn't necessarily mean that there are unsolved problems related to the adoption. So that's a long way of saying kids who are adopted have lagging skills and unsolved problems. They are highly individualized. I'm taking them one at a time.
We have a parent who it sounds like has used the outfit
Has
that
used
has
the
a long
outfit that
list
has
of
a long
unsolved
list of
problems
unsolved problems
and has prioritized
has
two,
prioritized
is
two,
wondering how to
is
manage
wondering
the
how to
other
manage
unsolved
the other
problems.
unsolved problems.
He's not using Plan
He's
B.
not using
just
Plan B
yet.
just yet.
Great question. We are getting some great questions tonight. That's definitely one of them. What you're doing with the unsolved problems you're not working on is Plan C. Now that can take one of two forms. One form of Plan C is simply not bringing it up at all. So if you've decided that difficulty brushing teeth at night is Plan C, you just don't tell the kids to brush their teeth. The kid did brush his teeth at night, and that's a good example of not bringing it up. But the other thing you might need with Plan C is what we call an interim plan. An interim plan is not where you're actually solving the problem. It's where you're coming up with a plan for what things are going to look like while we're not working on the problem. So here's an example. Let's say that we've decided that doing homework is Plan C for now. I know that that is sacrilegious in many segments of our society, but let's say we put doing homework in Plan C. But while the kid is not doing his homework, he's bothering his sibling who is trying to do his homework. Now we need an interim plan, right? What does not doing homework look like for the kid who's not doing his homework? We're not solving the homework problem. We've set it aside for now. That's Plan C. But we do need to come up with an interim plan so that at least he's not bugging his brother while he's not doing his homework. That's an interim plan. But that's usually what people face when they are just getting going with the model and they have a very, very long list of unsolved problems. Generally speaking, as you start chipping away at those unsolved problems through use of Plan B, the number of unsolved problems shrinks and there are fewer that you need to be doing Plan C on, whether that's an interim plan or just not bringing it up. But it can be a little rocky early on because in many kids, there are many, many, many unsolved problems. It's very hard to let that many go. Of course, it's harder to try to solve them all, thereby making sure that we solve none at all. So the prioritizing bit is crucial. And sometimes we got to slog through Plan C as we are trying to get enough solved with Plan B to get a Plan B rhythm going.
Excellent advice. How is the feedback when I'm talking now? Because we got a note that there was some audio feedback when I speak. How is it now?
I was not hearing any feedback. I was not hearing any feedback from you, so we'll have to have the people who told you there was feedback respond to that.
Okay, I did make a little change, so let me know how it is now. Another theme trending on Facebook is a lot of parents struggling with trying to get their kids to stop playing video games and transition to a different activity, whether it be dinner or bedtime. And a lot of folks asking for ideas on Facebook about what to do to make the transition go smoother. And then there's been a lot of feedback that from other parents saying, you know, "Oh, well, it kind of depends on what the kid's concern is." So maybe you could talk through how to go about making sure that we're using the 3 steps of Plan B in order to talk about the unsolved problem of going from video games to another activity.
Well, and you're probably seeing that people are saying the feedback is now better. So
Right,
whatever
thank
you did solved the problem. Your first solution worked. If only life was only that easy in the Plan B territories. I'm one of those people who, when people tell me there's an unsolved problem and ask me what the solution is, my answer is almost routinely, I have no idea. Because there are many, many different reasons that a kid may be having difficulty getting off the video game to go eat dinner. It might have to do with dinner. It might have to do with video game. To go take a shower. It might have to do with the shower. It might have to do with the video game. So I wish that it was possible to make this more algorithmic so that if you have XYZ problem, you have XYZ solution. But that is not how this model works. A good solution is 100% dependent on whether it addresses the concerns of both parties. And since the unsolved problem, difficulty ending the video game to come to dinner, since there are dozens of concerns that I have heard kids express on that very unsolved problem, and dozens of concerns that I have heard parents express as it relates to their concerns about that unsolved problem, I have found it impossible to come up with an algorithm. If you have this problem, you do this solution. That's not the way the model works, because we are so dependent in this model on coming up with solutions that address the concerns of both parties. So I don't have a great answer there, except do the 3 steps of Plan B. The empathy step is where you're gathering information about the kid's concerns. The define adult concern step is where the adult is entering their concerns into consideration. I should add that it is during the empathy step that adults have most of the jaw-dropping moments that I see when I'm helping people do Plan B. And see, this is what's fascinating. Why are their jaws dropping wide open? Because they are now hearing their kids' concerns and learning that their kids' concerns are not even close to what they thought they were. And that helps us understand why the solutions that they have been trying to apply were not working. They were based on false information because we hadn't gathered information from the kid about his concern or perspective on the unsolved problem. So with nearly 100% reliability, if somebody tells me a problem and asks me the solution, now you know why the answer is. I have no idea until I know the concerns of both parties. And then, even then, I'm not a solution machine. The people who got to figure out the solution isn't me, it's them. The solution doesn't have to work for me. The solution has to be realistic and mutually satisfactory for them. That's how this model works.
What I love about our Facebook parents group is that we have both very new parents to the model, and then we have parents who've been working the model for a number of years, and the conversations are amazing, and the feedback is amazing, and it's a really like neat community. It's a large community. It's a large 1,666 members. But it's a very lively group. Coming through every day. But It's definitely
do
worth
every
checking
day,
out
but
if you
it's
haven't.
definitely worth checking out if you haven't.
Nicole
And
got
Kim,
back.
let me, before you
Nicole
keep
got
going,
back.
let me
Sure.
just make sure that you are recognized for the ridiculously amazing job you have done with the Lives in the Balance whole Facebook setup. I am most appreciative, and I know that there are 5,600 parents out there who are appreciative too.
Thank you very much. I
Thank you
appreciate
very
your
much.
appreciation.
I appreciate your appreciation.
Nicole provided us some more
Nicole
information about her
provided us
first
some more
question about
information about her
approaching
first question about
schoolmates and
approaching
friends impacting
schoolmates and
forward
friends
progress.
impacting
She
forward
added
progress.
that we are
She
using
added that we are
the
using
plan, but he forgets
the
everything
plan,
when he's
but he
in the
forgets
moment.
everything
For
when he's in
example,
the
fighting
moment.
friends
For
at
example, fighting friends at school.
All right, now that does clarify things. That is not the question I would have answered previously. So Nicole, thank you for clarifying. This is an interesting question. There's two parts to it that we probably want to talk about. If we're trying to come up with a solution over unsolved problems, yes, the feedback is back. I'm getting it now.
I just made another change, so
So
I can tell it's still back.
I can
I'm
tell
gonna
it's
keep
still back.
working on it.
I will keep working on it.
Got it. It says maybe turn down your speakers. We'll let you figure it out. You don't want my help with technology, that's for sure. That is for sure. If we are trying to solve problems that are causing fighting with friends at school, and we are not involving the friends in the process of trying to solve those problems, if we are trying to solve those problems only through your son, I don't think they're going to work very well, because we don't have the concerns of the friends entered into consideration. And I might be reading way too much into this, but Nicole, you'll have to let us know. I hope we're not using your son as the primary agent of change to solve problems that are causing fights with friends at school. It's going to be almost impossible to solve those problems only through your son. We're going to have other people who are involved in that as well. So that's the first point I'm thinking of. We may not want to use the most vulnerable part of the equation as the central agent of change in unsolved problems that involve other people. That's very hard to do. Here's the second part that this could mean. Nicole, you'll have to let us know. We are looking for solutions that solve the problem durably, so that your son doesn't find himself in the heat of the moment the next time. We are not looking for solutions for what your son should do in the heat of the moment the next time, because that doesn't actually solve the problem. It just helps your son know what to do in the heat of the moment the next time. But those kinds of solutions pretty much guarantee that he's going to keep finding himself in the heat of the moment. So he keeps having to use a solution for the heat of the moment that isn't solving the problem to keep him from being in the heat of the moment. We're looking for solutions that solve the problem so he doesn't find himself in the heat of the moment the next time. I tend not to have much faith in solutions that are, okay, so the next time Thomas teases you on the playground, you're going to just walk away. That means he's going to be walking away for the rest of the school year. We need to get to the heart of the unsolved problem with Thomas and the teasing so that we can come up with a solution so that the teasing ends and the child doesn't find himself in the heat of the moment the next time. Those are two completely different types of solutions, and I'm not sure that I'm explaining it well tonight. One solution is what the kid should do in the heat of the moment the next time. The other is what solves the problem so he doesn't find himself in the heat of the moment again. We're looking for the problem-solving solutions, not the crisis management solutions. The problem is solved solutions. Hope that's clear.
Would you, and how's my sound now? I think it's better.
The only thing I'll say about the sound now is that the sound is not corresponding to the movement of your mouth, but that's okay.
Would you say if going for the emergency in the moment solution would you ever say to go for that first to as interim sort of step in incremental problem solving and then working towards the longer term solution?
That's fine. What I find is that a lot of people just stick with the emergency crisis management solution, and that's not going to solve the problem is the issue. It's all it's going to do is give him some action for when the problem that isn't solved yet comes up again. So no problem coming up with something that maybe is a 2 or 3 day solution for what to do in the meantime. If the problem should happen to pop up, well, we're looking to solve the problem, not help the kid know what to do over the long haul every single time the problem pops up.
Gotcha. And I apologize if the feedback remains. I'm running out of ideas for what to do. But I think we should press forward anyhow. We have some more questions. When there is an unsolved problem should I talk to my child about how we're not working on that problem yet, so at least he knows?
Your choice. If you're not working on it, it may not really matter if he knows it's a problem or doesn't know it's a problem. But if you feel strongly that you know that it's a problem and you are setting it aside for now, that's fine too.
I've had that experience. For sure, where I really felt like I needed to say something. I just said, "Oh, that's something that we're going to work on, and we'll get there."
Well, here's the best example I can think of from the Greene household. I used to say that my son was a double screener, meaning that he would have his computer open and he'd be on his computer, his laptop, when he was also watching TV. But he has outdone himself. He's now not just a double screener, he's a triple screener. Now he has his laptop open, he's watching TV, and he's got his iPhone up, and he's doing something on that as well, right? That's what I now call triple screening. We've progressed from double screening to triple screening. Drives me nuts. He knows it drives me nuts. He knows I don't like it. He also knows we're not working on it right now. By the way, to my point, him knowing that it drives me nuts, him knowing that I think it's an unsolved problem, and him knowing that we're not working on it right now has not changed a thing, which is why I'm not sure there's a great deal of added value in letting the kid know that it's a problem, but you're not working on it right now.
Great example. Next question. What happens when a child comes up with a different unsolved problem for the same issue? For example, our daughter throws a tantrum and asks to do homework. After everyone calms down, she provides X problem. However, the next time she's asked to do homework, the problem is something else. So it sounds like coming up with different.
Well, I hope that this is not Plan B being done in the heat of the moment. I hope we've used the assessment of lagging skills and unsolved problems to come up with all the unsolved problems that are all the expectations that your daughter is having difficulty meeting. Because otherwise it makes it very hard to prioritize, and we end up bouncing from one unsolved problem to another, which completely misses the point of being proactive about all of this. But we don't want to rule out the possibility that there are, first of all, multiple different homework assignments and multiple factors that could be making it difficult for your child to complete those multiple homework assignments. And so that's actually very common when you're doing proactive Plan B. This is why the empathy step, when you're doing proactive Plan B, can, especially early on, last, 15, 20 minutes. The child has many, many different concerns related to the same unsolved problem. It's not clear to me here that we're talking about the exact same unsolved problem here, because doing the writing the definitions to the spelling words in English and writing the term paper in English and writing the answers to the word problems in math and writing the lab report in science, even though they all share something similar, writing, and even though they are all homework, they are 4 completely different unsolved problems. A potential solution to the echo, Dr. Greene should mute his microphone when the question is being communicated. Kim, do you know what button I pressed to mute my microphone?
If you hover your
your
cursor sort of towards the top of where your head is on the video, there's a microphone with a slash through it.
There is, eh?
There's like a person, and then there's a microphone with a slash through it, and a video camera with a slash through it. Not seeing it.
Oh, that ain't happening tonight. We didn't rehearse that.
We'll work on it.
Oh, wait, I see it. I see it. All right. So, but now I unmuted. So now I know how to mute. We did that on the fly, Kim. That's called technology on the fly. Ross Greene at work. So I hope that this mom is not solving problems in the heat of the moment. I am getting the slight scent of emergency plan B. We want to be doing this proactively, and it is likely that the child has multiple concerns about the same unsolved problem. Very common, in fact, typical. Each of those concerns need to be addressed, sometimes with a different plan B.
And that's when we tend to talk about
You talk.
That's when we tend to talk about the drilling strategy of tabling, where we gather this list of concerns and perspectives that have to do with the same unsolved problem. But then, if a hand cramp is part of the concern, but also I can't think of what to write is part of the concern, they're going to require 2 very different strategies to solve. So how did that
Now,
work?
before you go on,
Did that work?
we'll have to find out. I have no idea. Maybe. Before we go on, there's another fairly common scenario, and that is you start plan B with a certain unsolved problem or unmet expectation, and in the process of hearing the kid's concerns about it, the unsolved problem does something that I call morphing. The unsolved problem morphs into something else that is actually a different unsolved problem. Now you have a decision to make. Do we want to work on the one we started with, or do we want to continue rolling with the one we have stumbled across? Totally a judgment call. Oh, that worked perfectly. No echo. So now we know what we need to do.
Now
and
we know it's your
fortunately,
fault.
the technology is easy enough for me to handle. So that can happen too. And then you've got to decide which unsolved problem we're working on right now, because we started with one, we have now stumbled across another within the same plan B. What direction are we heading in here? I don't think you can really go wrong there. So there's no real algorithm for you. It's just a judgment call. You do need to keep it organized and say something like, all right, you know what? We've now stumbled across a different unsolved problem. I think we need to think about which one we actually want to be working on right now. We started with We started with difficulty eating your Brussels sprouts at dinner. But we've now stumbled across difficulty sitting next to your brother at dinner because I've heard that he's pinching you under the table. Which of those do you want to work on right now? The Brussels sprouts or the pinching? And the parents can make the call. There's no reason not to let the kid participate in the decision, but that's what we call a morphing unsolved problem. You gather information. There's an outstanding likelihood you're going to hear about unsolved problems you didn't even know about.
Excellent. All right, mute yourself. How do you implement Plan B with kids who become physical with parents?
Kids who become physical with their parents are becoming physical in response to specific unsolved problems. The kid becoming physical is happening downstream. The problem that's causing the kid to become physical is happening upstream. becoming physical, as unpleasant as it is simply, and I hate to say this because kids getting physical with their parents is very tough to take. And here's the good news. You're not going to have to take it much longer once you start solving the problems that are causing the kid to become physical in the first place. So long as we're focused on the getting physical part, those problems aren't going to get solved because we're focused downstream, not upstream. Getting physical, just like screaming, swearing, spitting, biting. Those are all ways that the kid is letting us know an expectation has been placed upon me that I'm having difficulty meeting. That action's upstream. Kids start becoming less physical in response to the unsolved problems that are causing them to get physical once those problems are solved. That's where the action's at. I wouldn't do Plan B any differently with a kid who's getting physical than I would with a kid who is pouting or sulking or whining, which most caregivers view as being less extreme and less unpleasant, but they're all cut from the same bolt of cloth. Those are all ways that kids express the fact that they're having difficulty meeting expectations.
We have about 10 minutes left, so if you have a question that you'd like to ask, please make sure you do. And in the meantime, another trend that I see on our parents' Facebook page often is wondering how to speak to your child's school, who is a very Plan A type environment, and how do you get them to be interested in learning about this model?
Whew. That is frequently a tough one. My standard advice, and this is so different for different schools, but my standard advice is to try to find someone in the building who will listen, who we think will be receptive, who can give you the lay of the land on who needs to be on board and who to talk to try to effect some changes on behalf of your child. But it is very difficult. But that's who you're looking for because you have to start someplace. Sometimes, but by no means always, that person is the school counselor, the school psychologist, the guidance counselor, the school social worker, because sometimes the mental health training that people in those positions have predispose them toward being receptive to the collaborative and proactive solutions model. But I wish that that was a 100% reliable thing, but it's not. Many school counselors, guidance counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, many of them have training that actually has them disinclined toward the CPS model. And now we got to find somebody else. Sometimes that somebody else is in the building. Sometimes that somebody else is an advocate or one of the certified providers on the CPS Connection website. But I find that this is one of the hardest things for parents to face, is how to get a building that is wearing certain lenses and is doing things certain ways, and worse yet, has yet to come to grips with the fact that the ways in which they are doing things are not working. For a lot of the kids, they're doing it too. I mean, I'm always happy if I have if I have a school that is still doing that stuff but knows it isn't working. We got a tougher row to hoe when we have a school that's still doing that stuff and thinks it is working. They don't yet know that it's not working. Sometimes parents have to use the special ed process to get the kind of changes they're looking for. You don't want to start adversarial. You want to start in problem-solving mode. See if you can find somebody in the building who can help you out along these lines, but it can be very tough. That's why I wrote Lost at School, and that's why the follow-up to Lost at School, called Lost and Found, is coming out in May 2016.
And a follow-up question. What do you think about IEPs and 504s? And I think the question is, in what circumstances would you advocate for either of those?
Well, I think highly of IEPs and 504s. There are ways in which 504s and IEPs are written that don't necessarily lend themselves very well to solving problems collaboratively. So this does sometimes require adjustments in the way an IEP or 504 is written. The reason I like them is that they memorialize, they codify, if you will, what is supposed to be being done with a particular student to help that kid in the realms in which the kid needs help. The bad news, of course, is that even sometimes if you have a 504 or IEP, it doesn't get you as far as you thought it was going to get you. We are going to be posting a sample IEP and sample 504 up on the Lives in the Balance website, I think before January 1st, so people can have a sample of what it looks like. To have a 504 and IEP that are written based on goals that are formulated based on unsolved problems, I think it will be very helpful to people. But I like them as a way to memorialize and to get people to sort of sign off on, here's what we've agreed to. The rub is, quite frankly, in who's implementing the IEP. You can have a spectacular IEP, but if it's implemented by somebody who really isn't on board and doesn't know what they're doing, that IEP might not do you so much good.
And we'll be sure to post links to the samples on our pages when those are up and running. I think they'll be very well received because there's a lot of questions that I see parents asking each other about wording on IEPs and 504s. Let's see, just to clarify, if Plan C is used on homework once it is refused to be done and the child proceeds to turn on the TV, should they be allowed to watch TV indefinitely until a Plan B meeting on TV watching takes place? Electronics previously wouldn't be allowed in our home until homework is finished.
If I understand that one, I guess we would have to say something. Yes, if you're doing Plan C on homework, you are not expecting that the homework will be done. If TV watching, so now all you've done so far is you've prioritized away homework doing. You haven't really talked about what the kid is going to be doing while he's not doing his homework. That would be a Plan C interim plan. And that's where you would be discussing what he's going to be doing while he's not doing his homework. And if TV watching is the interim plan, then TV watching is the interim plan for now. If there need to be some parameters on the TV watching as part of the interim plan, that would be part of the interim plan as well. So we got a few different things in this question. First, using Plan C on homework simply means we are not expecting that the homework be done until we start working on that in Plan B. What that looks like would have to be arrived at through a Plan C interim plan.
Excellent.
Hope that makes sense.
We're just
And
about.
I think we're probably about done.
Yeah, I think we're just about at our time, and we got through all of our questions, which was great. Thank you very much, everyone, for submitting such interesting questions. And this is our second webinar that we've tried out, and it seems to be well received, and I think that we will do more in the future, but I want to let everybody know that probably not until the end of winter, because I'm going to be going on maternity leave. And so their webinars are not going away. They're just going to be paused for a little bit of time. And again, happy Thanksgiving to those who celebrate, and thank you for joining us. Any last words, Dr. Greene?
We wish you all the best in the delivery of a healthy new baby, and the best of luck with that. And we can't wait till you come back in mid-March.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
Good night, everybody.
Good night,
And take
everybody.
care.
Good night.
And take care.